The reason it's important to think about ground-based air defenses right now is because for the last 30 years or so, there's been a broad assumption in a number of Western militaries, particularly in Europe, that air defense was a relatively marginal challenge. This was because air superiority against most putative opponents was effectively presumed. In the context of competition against a peer competitor such as Russia, however, this can no longer be assumed, at least in the early stages of a conflict. Allied air forces will be tied down with tasks such as the suppression of enemy air defenses, meaning that the levels of close air support and air cover, which ground components have become used to, may not always be available. But also, adversaries, even those without equally capable air forces, have a number of avenues through which they can conduct air attacks on the ground component. These range from relatively cheap capabilities like loitering munitions or unguided munitions with glide kit, through along the spectrum to more expensive and exquisite capabilities such as quasi-ballistic missiles and cruise missiles, all of which will pose a challenge to armies, including the British Army, at every stage of their deployment to the front line and through the course of combat on the front line. Broadly speaking, the air and missile defense within the UK, as within most Western nations, is a whole force enterprise. So no one component of the joint force owns all the pieces of the puzzle. The Army, for example, fields a range of short-range and medium-range air defense solutions, which can be useful against a spectrum of threats. Certain threat types, in particular ballistic missiles, are threats that, at least presently, the Royal Navy will primarily hold the effectors to engage, while many sensors, which may be critical to the early detection and track of a number of air threats, will be owned by the RAF, things like the E-7 Wedgetail, for example. So what's critical, both for the defense of the homeland, but also for the defense of fielded forces, is the ability for these sensor networks to talk to one another. For example, ground-based air defenders to be able to leverage data drawn from across the joint force. It's also likely the case that in any contest with a peer competitor, the UK will be operating alongside allies, many of whom will own capabilities and operate capabilities that are relevant to defense against certain parts of the threat spectrum. Patriot batteries against ballistic missiles, for example. Again, however, this creates a requirement for systems integration and for seamless integration with allies and partners in order to allow British forces to both leverage the capabilities of allies but also contribute to their situational awareness and their agile employment.